Wir haben jetzt den interessanten Teil, wo wir uns die Frage stellen und vor allem den Gästen, die von weit her gekommen sind, die Frage stellen können, was von den vielen Papieren, von den vielen Empfehlungen, von dem vielen Engagement, was wir gerade schon beschrieben bekommen hat, tatsächlich dort ankommt, wo die Konflikte sind, dort ankommen, wo Frauen sich engagieren. Wir haben dafür bis insgesamt 21 Uhr und es sind 3 Blöcke vorgesehen. Das heißt, wir werden uns da relativ flott auch durchbewegen. Wie gesagt, es geht um Länderbeispiele und wir fangen dann mit dem Länderbeispiel Liberia an, dann kommt Israel und Palästina und dann haben wir tatsächlich noch Zeit, mit den 3 Expertinnen, die diese Beispiele uns beschreiben, auch noch hier kurz zu sprechen und vor allem endlich in den Austausch zu treten. Ich glaube, dann hat man viel gehört und hat, glaube ich, auch viel zu besprechen. Deshalb möchte ich dem auch gerne genug Zeit geben. Gleichzeitig ist die Tagung ja A, noch ein paar Tage länger und B, gibt es danach auch noch einen Empfang und man hat die Möglichkeit, sich nochmal informell auszutauschen, auch mit den Leuten zu sprechen, die mal neben einem sitzen, mit den Referentinnen zu sprechen. Having said that, I would like to switch for English just to make it easier. I was asking Rebecca how her German was, and she said she could say danke, which I think is extremely important, but in fact, we have to say thank you for coming here and for giving us on-the-ground experience that you have from Liberia. I think if you saw the announcement, Liberia, unique good practice case, Liberia, the first of the police battalion, the female head of state elected in Africa, etc., etc. So I think you will show us the good parts of this first and this good example, but you would also pour, as we say in German, some water into the wine and tell us where the challenges will be lying for the future, because, I mean, you're the head of a peace, the manager of a peace program by the European Commission. You're also the advocacy person for Medica Mondiale. So you will not run out of work soon, I assume, although you might like to do so. So we're very pleased, Rebecca, to have you here, to hear what you have to tell us from the Liberian experiences with 1325, in what way it hooks up to things that have been done before, and in what way it also leads the way forward for future engagement. So I understand you will be presenting us also some photos, and then we can also start talking.
Danke. That's how much I know. I say greetings from Liberia. I will try to speak slowly and reduce my Liberian accent. I have a very deep Liberian accent, and I will try to speak very slowly so that you can gather the information that I have for you. I want to say for me, it's really a great opportunity to have all of you here and having me here to give you the case of Liberia in a synopsis, in a nutshell, actually, so that you understand a bit the conditions and the situation with women and the issues as it relates to the implementation of the 1325 in Liberia. For us, we think this instrument is very important. It's an important tool as Liberian women, because for us it draws out the importance of women's role and how it shows how women can be agents of change, and also it doesn't only focus on the negative, which is the fact that women are victims, but that women can be agents of change. And also this tool allows us and enable us to be able to assert our claims and make some demands so that we can have our place on negotiation tables and in peace processes, in post-reconstruction processes. And so for us, we think that this tool is very important, and I would like to really establish that fact. So if you look at globally the Liberian picture, we call it, yes, a best case scenario, and we want to say that too. Looking back at the resolution and our experience but on the war, we can say we've begin to take steps forward. So for tonight, I will want to start with some concrete ways that this resolution has affected the lives of Liberians, and by first of all looking at government's efforts in that light. So some basically just a layout of those things that we've done, we set in place as government in collaboration with the UN, in collaboration with our NGOs, women organizations, rights organizations, that could foster the implementation of the 1325. So we've established as a government in Liberia the National Human Rights Commission. We also have a constitutional reform task force, and this task force is to look at harmonizing the national constitution with the traditional laws. We work on a poverty reduction strategy document in Liberia that was finalized, and this document really treated gender as a cross-cutting issue, and the work under 4 pillars. So the gender was treated quite on an elaborate level. And Liberia is also the first country to have developed a national action plan that was published last year, March, at the International Colloquium in Liberia. There is in Liberia a national gender policy developed by the Ministry of Gender for use by the Liberian National Police, we say the LMP. We've also established in our police unit, the LMP, the Liberian Police Women and Children Protection Unit, and we have 46 of these units across the country in different police stations. We've developed the National Standard Operating Procedures for Gender-Based Violence, GBV, and this document is to respond to sexualized violence in Liberia, and also ensure a coordinated multi-sectoral approach to gender-based violence and sexual gender-based violence. There's also an action plan in place developed for gender-based violence in Liberia, for case management of gender-based violence, including sexual exploitation and abuse. We've to increase the recruitment of female police in the police force. We have put in place a special program in Liberia, and that is called the Accelerated High School Diploma Training Program. So that because the program requires that you have a high school graduate, and majority of the women that would be police officers are not high school graduates. So this program is in support of that action. There is now a special court set up in Liberia that's set up only to try rape cases. It's called the Criminal Code E. And we now have female judges appointed to the circuit courts. That's from the national level. At the Ministry of Gender, from the development of the National Action Plan, the Ministry of Gender has set up a national secretariat, and this the Gender Ministry has recruited a national coordinator for the implementation of the 1325. The Ministry of Gender has also developed, as I said earlier, a national gender policy and a Gender Equity Act to increase female participation in governance, political parties, and other institutions. And this document is currently before the legislators and waiting to be passed into law. There is a national steering committee now for the implementation of the 1325, and there's also a technical committee. And quite recently, we just established an observatory for monitoring the implementation of the steering committee. And to further up our work on the implementation from the national level, from the Ministry of Gender, in collaboration with all stakeholders. We've established project steering committees in 5 pilot counties in Liberia. Now, that's the work of that's the work we've done in support of the implementation related to government's efforts, and then the Ministry of Gender with the full support of NGOs and NGOs. But we have also in support of the implementation of a lot of efforts being made by NGOs and NGOs. Like someone was saying earlier, the implementation of the 1325 is not a mandate for a particular group, a particular agency. It's just out of will for the improvement of or the well-being of women, or gender sensitivity that people implemented 1325. But in our light, we have organizations that are working, and I would like to say quickly that there are a lot of organizations that will do a lot of work in support of the implementation, but these organizations don't call their work implementation of the 1325 as such. But particularly, we have work being done by Medica Mondiale in Liberia that supports the implementation of the 1325. So Medica Mondiale and a few other organizations, I'll just give you insight of what we do. Medica Mondiale on the local basic level establish peace committees. We also work with a peace network in the local communities, and this network is to increase women political participation at the very local level, coming to national and then international level. And they get basic training, and it's actually around advocacy as a strategy and networking, as I said. We also have protection support groups called SGBV support groups in all of the communities that we work in. And when you look through the National Action Plan and look at the indicators, I would like to say that the Liberian National Action Plan went further by deriving indicators and outputs and priority areas for implementation. So if you look into the implementation documents, the National Action Plan implementation documents, you see the indicators, and to a large extent from the global approach, you can see that Medica tackle a lot of the issues related to reproductive health, legal assistance, and what have you. We also have the Danish Refugee Council that have done some work with women involvement in peace building at the borderline, and then the International Alert that did some work with just increasing awareness on what the 1325 is like. But that's globally what the picture is in. A lot of the time we will say, this is, for me, I think it's a real major step. And these are just few of the instruments or the framework that we set in place in support of the implementation. But if you would like to get a clear picture of what the situation really is on the ground, I would like to tell you that it doesn't seem as really as rosy as it is. There's a lot of hurdles, there's a lot of problems, there's a lot of obstacles and challenges and resistance that we need to tackle before we can successfully implement the resolution. I know tomorrow is a time when we shall talk in depth about the obstacles and challenges, but for today I would just like to throw a light a bit on some of the problems we had. As one of the speakers was speaking, I heard her talk about cultural issues, and sometimes those are things that we don't look at when we talk about implementation, and then implementation of anything, any project, anything. But in Liberia, it is a major obstacle. We have a culture we call a culture of, I call a culture of following a leader. And women are supposed to participate. Yeah, women are supposed to participate, and their voices are supposed to be heard. They're supposed to make the input and the impact. But by virtue of the fact that for a long time, this culture has been perpetuated, and also the suppression from the ruling class, and then the fact that men have always been rulers and leaders, women very readily would not give the input on several issues. It is a cultural practice that I think to a very large extent will hamper the implementation of the 1325. And also the issue, something we call paralysis of initiative. I don't know if it's a cultural practice, but it's a mark of the culture where you want to survive just for today, and you don't envisage what lies ahead, what's in the future, because for you, a day's meal is a great achievement. That syndrome affects to a very large extent, in my understanding, the implementation of the 1325. And a lot more that we talk about tomorrow, and the roads. You will begin to see them tomorrow, some pictures from there, illiteracy, and in a lot of things like a limited capacity of women, training. There's someone talking about training. The trainings will focus, we have training, very limited training, and in fact the training will only focus on women roles at the very basic local level, where they arrange, maybe change their own perceptions about themselves and the community and community mediations and do small things. But training for women who would be mediators, those kind of trainings, I don't know if I ever heard about any in Liberia. However, there's a lot of other challenges that we want to talk about that are there, and obstacles that tomorrow will highlight a lot more. And one thing I will quickly want to say is sometimes the picture is like we've had a lot of support from the UN and what have you, but sometimes I also think that it's really feeble, it's weak. Yeah, I'll give you an example. I attended a conference in Sweden, a training actually, and this training was a peace mission, peace operation. And then we had to talk to the panelists from TPKO, and everybody was asking questions about issues that were of concern to them. For my particular concern was related to these very issues that we discussed today, the implementation, start taking, how the monitoring, and what have you. That is what I was concerned about, and that was the only question I asked, and that was the only gender issue that was raised, according to my understanding. But surprisingly, the panelists told me there were no specialist on the panel for gender. They didn't have a representative, and I was really shocked by that. And for me, it clearly indicates the importance we attach to the issue of gender. But basically, that's my input. We've had some conditions that are in favor of favorable opportunities, conditions that are in favor of the implementation that we'll also highlight tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. That was really impressive, and also seeing the pictures that really brought us a little bit closer. And I'm really very glad that there will be time tomorrow to really go deeper even into the experience. I have to say I was really, impressed by the number of papers. I mean, we know that Liberia, you might remember West African countries, 14 years of civil war. You might remember the articles, maybe not enough, about the many women raped. I think Medica Mondiale manages a number which is around that half of the women and girls, or even more, 50 to 70% of the women have been raped and sexually abused. And this is not something that was confined to the wartime, but is also still ongoing. You mentioned the difficulty of changing a culture. And that's not only, for changing power relations, but also with regards to how rape is viewed. So, I mean, you've got a huge challenge at your hand, and at the same time, Yeah, you mentioned the impressive array of different papers, gender policies, structures being in place. I mean, when we heard before the number of papers at the UN and EU level and the lack of structures, really, we would say, wow, this is wonderful. And also, we've been mentioning before the Liberia has so many experiences of being first. I mean, I think the UN special representative of the Secretary General of the UN, first woman. You have first woman president in Africa. So, you know, you'd say, wow, this is a cool combination of factors to maybe make things happen. What would you think? I mean, you know, we're just saying, okay, so there were more women, we had a strong mandate, and we had strong gender units. Is that the only solution, or are there more things that you would say, wow, this makes Liberia unique, but at the same time, hey, other countries, hey, Germany, listen closely, this is what you can help, this is what you can do?
We would actually like to exploit, the efforts of the government. I would like to say at the national level, there's a strong will to improve the lives of women, for the well-being of women. But we have all of these different framework, instruments, documents, policies, all in place. Yeah. But the actual picture is that the information, first of all, these documents are for the educated, the literate, and majority of our women are illiterate, can read. And I haven't seen us, besides the National Action Plan on the 1325, where we've designed a communication strategy in consideration of our population and the illiterate. I haven't seen other document that consider this fact, that the majority of our people are illiterate. So first of all, they are really illiterate, and so it's difficult. And the next thing is, like I said, we are a poor country. People are really poor. If you want to, I did a survey just before we began the EC project, and we were treating with 3 counties, and so 3 urban and cities, and then the rural communities. And when you look at the needs of the women in those communities, they were quite different. The women in the urban areas would say education, their needs were education and participation. But the women in the rural areas would say food, clothes, respect. So a woman who wants food, who does not have food, who wants her child to go to school, who's fighting for her child to eat a day's meal, how can she participate? That's an issue. It's very, very, very important. Another very important issue, I think, that very tied to a lot of other things is the road condition. That you probably see a photo of tomorrow. I don't know if we cannot show it today, but the roads are terrible. Services will not reach the people. People with goodwill who want to go to the interior cannot, because they just can't. Inaccessible, you can't reach there. And so the legal, the justice system, everything around those things cannot reach women in the rural community. And we're talking about like 85% of the population. So that is a challenge. With this instrument, the pictures is that, we have the picture that we want to make a change, but we have also these hurdles that actually pull us back, and it's very difficult, coupled with several other things that we probably will talk about tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think tomorrow is the case to really speak more. I mean, I learned from this that having a very good standard of 1325 mandates, national action plans, structures, implementation is just one piece in a big puzzle if you want to reach human security. So it's not a pars pro toto. You can't say, okay, we did 1325, right, so everything is okay for Liberia, things will go better. But there needs to be, and you've reminded us of that quite well, there needs to be much, much more. And gender is an important part of that, but it can't, you know, the other things need to be in place as well.
And that's practitioners.
Yeah, and that's for, and you've mentioned also the actors who are called on. It's the Liberian government itself, it's the Liberian people, but it's also the international NGOs, it's the donor community, it's the UN. I mean, it's not something that probably Liberia can manage all by itself, especially when you talk about the conditions of development and not development. So I think it's been very important to hear that.
And you know, when we talk about the 1325 and we look at the efforts that the UN has made in Liberia, which is really great, we can say, but there's a lot more, because in the first place, from what I know, my own experience is that even UN personnel don't know what the 1325 is. They don't have first-hand information. You ask them, you reach to them, you ask them, they don't know. Peacekeepers who should be trained on gender issues, they don't take these trainings. And I know I've attended several peace building trainings in Africa where we have the AU, the ECOWAS, and my questions have been around this gender training for the troops that will enter Liberia, and it's always a no. They don't take this training. So those are so the information is very limited. Yeah, even at the UN level, they themselves, they don't have it.
Yeah, so great example, good practice, but lots to be still learned, lots to be still improved, and lots to be still done. Rebecca, I thank you very much, and I'd say we continue hopefully with many of you tomorrow in looking at the Liberian case. And for those of you who are wondering, shouldn't there have been another person sitting here? Carole Doucet was unfortunately not able to come. But I think you've mentioned from your experience much of what the UN mission has done or not done. And I think you've made up a bit for what Carole would have brought us. And thank you for also shouldering this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Vielen Dank. And yeah, now we have to make a rapid switch to another region in the world, to another conflict context. And I think we're all very grateful to hear from Palestine and also from Israel of what women have done, what women have achieved, and in what way 1325 has been a help, can be a help, should be a help. So I think we're eager to learn from you. Can I ask Zahira, Kamal, and Anat Saragusti to join me here? Can you have a seat first? I'll present you. So I have the pleasure, hello Anat, to introduce briefly, and then you will also get a short presentation. Also, we're all aware that we're going to have another session tomorrow, so it's going to be hard for you to pick any of these sessions. But it helps me as a moderator to say, let's not ask all the questions that are burning at our fingertips now, but also we have time tomorrow. Zahira, I mean, people who have been in touch and have been working on Palestine, have been working on women's rights, have probably heard of Zahira Kamal. You're currently the director of the Palestinian Women Research and Documentation Center of the UNESCO. I had to read that. And you have been a minister of women affairs of the Palestine National Authority. That was 3 years, 2003 to 2006. And before that, you have also been active in women's rights, in non-governmental organizations, in the government, in political parties. I think I could tell you much more, but I'll also ask you to maybe ask Zahira directly about her experience. I think you bring a vast array of different experiences, but they've all had one focus. Yeah, bettering the women's position, but also not only in Palestine. What is fascinating that with your engagement within Palestine, you've also been founding member of the International Women's Commission on Palestine, and you know there's the nexus also with Anat's work, and I'll present Anat later on. And you've been able to do much work across communities, not only within Palestine. And I would like to ask you, to bring us to the picture. What has been going on, what has to be still going on with respect to implementing 1325 in Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you a lot. I don't know what happens, but first of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to be with you and speaking about Palestinian women. First of all, I can tell you that 1325, up till the last 3-4 years, it wasn't a concern for Palestinian women, actually. And here, if we want to see why Palestinian women were not aware about the resolution, this is because of the historical background that they have, the heavy occupation that they have. And here I can tell you that, and here it is the Palestinian interpretation of the situation, which says that in 1920, Palestinians were in Palestine, and 100% of Palestine was belonging to the Palestinians. And, you know, on 1917, Balfour had promised Jews that to build their state on Palestine. And here at that time, Palestinians were defending their right to condemn, first of all, Balfour Declaration and to have their own state. On 1947, UN take the partition declaration in which the Palestinian can control 48% of Palestine. But that was followed by a conflict and a war between Palestinians, and at that time Israel was not still created by the Jews, and the high immigration that it's coming to Palestine, and accordingly in 1948 Israel was established and controlled 77.9% of Palestine, while Palestinians they have 22% of Palestine. But even though Palestinians were divided into geographical states. First of all, West Bank was controlled by Jordan at that time, and Gaza was controlled by Egypt. And accordingly, different rules has been implemented on West Bank and Gaza, and that's one of the problems that now we are facing for unifying the rules and the laws that it's going on. On 1967, Israel occupied the whole Palestine, and Palestinians now still even under the control of the Israeli occupation. And here we can see how it's done. You know, this is on 1920, the partition. This should be like Palestine, and here it's after 67, Palestine. And now we are like this, but I will tell you, this is after Oslo Agreement, in which there are some areas that it is called A, B, C, in which we'll see how it is implemented. Of course, PLO, after a long way of struggling for the independence of Palestine, they accepted to go for negotiations with the Israelis and to came with what's called the peace process on 1989, and on which they accepted to go through the two-state solution. And here, as a result, Oslo Agreement was signed in 1993, and accordingly, the country, Israel, had to withdraw from West Bank and Gaza according to areas. Area A is considered the populated area, and Israel has to withdraw from it in 1994, actually, they withdraw from areas A, called A. And then area B, there is a redeployment of it after 3 years, but still Israel does not withdraw from it, on which this area, the services are given by the Palestinians, but the control, the security and the control on the roads and everything, it is under Israeli control. And there are the areas C that it is totally under the control of Israel. And here you can see that now, since Oslo, Palestinians are paying the price of the occupation. It is, they are giving the services. Before, Israel was giving the services, but now Palestinians are giving the services, but the control is on the hands of the Israelis. This is the situation. You can see how Israel is controlling the country. This is, first of all, it is the settlements. That settlements are scattered all over the country, and it is taking the majority of the country. And then they start building the separation wall, or what we call it also apartheid wall, that it is taking part also of the country. And as you see, there are some lands that it is trapped between the green line and between the wall. And these people are not able, there is more than 375,000 people that they are trapped in these areas. And in these areas, these people are not able to get the services, neither from the Palestinians nor from the Israelis. And these areas are separating the people from, sometimes there is, your house is inside these places, but the land you have to for agriculture, it is on the other side, and or it is opposite. The school, you are living here, and the school is on the other side, and the wall, there are gates. In these gates, it is open 10 minutes or 15 minutes in the morning. Then it is opened in the afternoon, 10 or 15 minutes. And if you have a kid, and it happens, and we have documentations about these people, that the kids sometimes they play in the school. They didn't recognize that the gate will be closed. And then they come back, and if they find that the gate is closed, and you find that the mother is begging the Israeli soldier to open for the kids, and they are not able. And of course, accordingly, they have to find someone from the family, relatives, or some of their friends to take the children and keep them at that time. The other thing, what happens? They start with what's called the bypass roads. Bypass roads, it is cutting the country from north to south and from east to west. And these roads are used by the settlers. It is confiscating our land, but we are not able to use these roads. We have to go to another, sometimes unpaved roads, but these roads are paved very well, and Israel is the first, perhaps one of the first 3 countries with the roads that they have, because they are not paying for the people, for the land. And these roads, it is not used by us. Then, they are controlling by us by checkpoints. Checkpoints that you see that there are some of them are in red and some others on yellow. The yellow one, it is like permanent roads, in which these roads, you have to show all your documents. You cannot pass unless you have like a magnetic card. You pass, of course, the security and all this. So you have the card that you pass. And in addition, you have a permission, special permission that you are passing. And you can see how many they are. So from from the village that it is surrounding the city to the main city, or from one village to the other village, you have to have a permission and to pass one road to the other. And of course, these checkpoints, it is not just you are showing your passport and you go. It is sometimes it is very humiliating people. So what does that mean? That West Bank and how much it is becoming belonging to us. Now the wall is taking like 9% of the land, and then the settlements are taking 8% of the land, and the Jordan Valley, this one, it is taking 28.5% of the land. And then the area remaining, it is the 54% of the land. And here is the problem, that the negotiations that are going on between the Palestinians and the Israelis, it's not on the negotiation of the lands that it is on 1967. But Israel is willing to negotiate about the remaining land that we have. This is the main problem that we have. How they control the country. It is the different measures that are taken, from demolishing houses, restriction of movement, frightening children in their schools, also frightening people while they are passing the checkpoints. And this is a kind of a systematic way that is used in order to have a voluntary immigration from the country. You know, in 1948, people were forced to be immigrated from the country. Now, with the measures, they want us to be immigrating, but it is a voluntary that I didn't want to come back to the country. I want to get out of this very difficult situation. Also, we have the Israeli tanks destroying our belongings, and here we witness it with the planes in Gaza lately and in West Bank. Even ambulances are not prevented from this. Also, as you see, they are deprived from movement, and medication is becoming very difficult. There is a shortage of medical services, and at the same time, it is they are preventing medical staff from passing, and on the same time, people who are in need of these services are not able to get it, because sometimes people are dying while they are waiting at the checkpoint in an ambulance, or sometimes we have 65 women that has been giving birth for their children on the roads before getting to the hospital, because the Israeli soldier does not believe them that they have the pains for giving birth. Of course, these are numbers. It's not who are killed or who are injured. It is not people that they are working in army or what is called terrorism or whatever. There are many people that they are civilians, and this is the statistics of the Ministry of Education. And here we see the demolition of houses, cutting of electricity and water supply and all this. And that ends with a lot of people that is killed, injured, in prison. You know, we have 11,000 people that they are in prison. And there is more than 40,000 persons that they become injured. And here we can see that this led that Palestinian women were not aware, because 1325 came 1 month after the about the second intifada, about the starting of the second intifada. And so for the first 5 years, women are just willing to find out how they can settle their life, to go with the schools of the children or the demolition of the houses, and how to continue the services of the house, doing their domestic kind of work on that. But not only this, because also this kind of humiliation of people, and mainly on men and young men, it is ended that the masculinity of men, it is not anymore as it was. Men are not able to play the role that they have to do, to be the breadwinner and the head of houses and all that. They are humiliated in front of their children and their wives. They are unemployed. They are not able to reach their working place. And there is now we can see that there is a changing role between men and women on these issues. And that led to more violence from men to women. And accordingly, we are witnessing a lot of domestic violence against women. Also, Palestinian women are not very aware about the resolution, because they are not sure that international community will listen to them, to their voices, to their stories. And they think that, as usual, there are some declarations that are taken, and USA is taking a veto against this resolution, and nothing will be implemented. So why we are aware about a new resolution that we are saying, and when we read it, we said that this resolution does not have teeth, even. So we are not in need to be aware about it. But despite of this, we were aware about peace. Since perhaps early 90s, there was a lot of dialogues between Palestinians and Israelis. And according to these dialogues, and with a third partner, which was Belgium, Simon Susskens, there was an institutionalizing these kind of dialogue through what's called the Jerusalem link, in which we want as women to show that peace is possible, two-state is possible, having Jerusalem as a capital of two states is possible, and the Jerusalem link can be the model. We have two centers, one in East Jerusalem, one in West Jerusalem, that they are operating individually, but on the same time, there is the Jerusalem link in which we have something in common that we are doing. And several activities took place since that time. And then even moving more, one step more, Jerusalem Link is a grassroots organization. We said that, okay, the grassroots is very important, but we want to reach the decision makers and to meet with them. And accordingly, we in 2005, we established what's called the International Women Commission for Justice, Peace between Palestinians and Israelis. And here we are, as people, we are talking one language as Palestinians and Israelis. Both of them, we are very committed to peace. And in Palestine, we, as women, we met with the president in order to adopt the Declaration 1325 and to have women that they are part of the negotiating team. And in Israel, they have a Knesset resolution. Now my friend will be talking about it. And I think I will be short on this now in order to have to respond to your questions. And perhaps tomorrow we will have more discussions about how we think from a human rights basis about the 1325 and what we are doing accordingly. The main constraint is occupation. Occupation is, as Palestinians, it impedes our rights of freedom, self-determination, and development. And really, as a person who start working on politics and with negotiations, I find that it kills our past, our present, and if it continues, it will kill our future. Thank you.
1325 hits many countries where things have been going on already. So, what's the new thing about it? Is it what does help in this mandate? So I hope also to hear now the Israeli perspective. I think you can probably complement on some parts, Anat, and I think it's also very important to hear what moved you to move into this International Women's Commission. Maybe you can also give us some more details. How many people of you, how often have you met to show the mechanism, how it has been working, and what you think that 1325 and 10 years 1325 and any support that comes out of this conference and other movements can give us. Can I briefly present you? Anat Saragusti, I only read, we've just met. You're executive director of Agenda, which is gives media services to social movements. So I also read you're a filmmaker, you're a photographer, you've been a journalist on TV. So pictures is something that moves you strongly. And of course, you're here because you're also a member of this International Women's Group. So you know each other, you're in the same thing. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward also to hear your impression, and then we see where it fuses, where women were able to bridge all these divides. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you to Zahira, and of course, to emphasize that I'm not an official Israeli, so I don't represent the occupier, nor do I represent the government of Israel. And I'm sure that if any one of them was here, you would hear a completely different narrative as of the conflict that is more than 100 years long. So I'm not going to dispute what Zahira just presented, and I will try to describe to you the Israeli scene vis-a-vis 1325. And me and Zahira are both members of the International Women Commission that was founded in 2005, and we work together since very closely and in a friendly manner. It was the night between the 30th and the 31st of May when Israeli commanders attacked a ship in the Mediterranean. The ship, the Mavi Marmara, was part of a flotilla making its way towards Gaza to break the siege. 9 people died on the ship during the military takeover. Israel became a target of political attacks and condemnation coming from all over the world and from within as well. The political situation enforced the government of Israel to establish a commission of inquiry. Why am I bothering you with this? Believe it or not, this committee may serve as a milestone in the struggle of women for equality in Israel. This may be so because it should come to you as not much of a surprise that of the 5 very honorable appointed members, not a single woman was to be found. Rather, these honorable men were mostly ex-army generals. A number of feminist organizations, by the way, the government of Israel is the largest ever. It has, I think, 30 ministers, only 2 women. So it's not a surprise that this committee doesn't have any woman as a member. A number of feminist organizations wrote a letter to the committee's chair pointing out the fact that under Israeli law, state-appointed commissions and decision-making bodies are required to include adequate representation of women from diverse groups. This law was passed 5 years ago as a result of a long process led by feminist organizations and several members of Israeli parliament. This process was a direct consequence of UN Security Council Resolution 1325, which passed in October 2000. Actually, Israel was the first UN member to integrate this resolution and turn it into a law of the land. But unfortunately, since that happy moment of success, the official Israel refuses to abide by its own law. I will tell you that a feminist organization, Itach Maki, Women Lawyers for Social Justice, which I'm a founding member of, is monitoring the implementation of the law, and this monitoring is possible due to the support of the Heinrich-Böll Foundation. This commission of inquiry is only one example. Our demand to include women in the commission was initially ignored, and we were forced to file a petition with the Supreme Court, in which we demanded our place at the table. The court ruling was clear. It ordered the government to search suitable women to be part of the commission. The government made a very small effort. In response, it offered that place to 5 women, all of whom refused to join the committee. The case was closed. Not long ago, when Israelis and Palestinians were celebrating yet another ceremonial opening of the direct talks, it is important to remember that, like before, here too, no woman was nominated to the negotiating team. But unlike before, and subsequent to a letter that women's organization wrote to the Prime Minister, he announced that he intends to appoint a woman to the small advisory team of the negotiations with the Palestinians. This has not happened yet, and also the negotiations are not developing. So there is no need to appoint a woman. These milestones point to dilemmas that we women organizations, feminists and peace activists face when we try to make ourselves heard and have an impact on the political process. The first dilemma is criterial. It emanates from the fact that women form groups of different types. Common to all is the desire to promote women and their agenda. Yet it is but natural that women's organizations are of varied political colors. What then constitutes a suitable female candidate for commissions or negotiating teams such as I just mentioned? Can we define, let alone agree upon, selection criteria? How does our struggle promote women from diverse groups? How do we make sure that our struggle will not end in promoting and strengthening the already strong women? The second dilemma is political. Who are the women that can bring to the table the feminine voice and perspectives? What is the feminine voice? And more directly, the struggle is not to integrate women as women. We want to integrate our worldview, our political views. And we hope that our views sets us apart from men in meaningful ways. We want a seat at the table to promote a political agenda. We want a seat at the negotiating table in order to integrate a political vision that would enhance the peace process. And we believe that women can do so in ways that men can't. But is it really so? Security Council Resolution 1325, that marks its 10th year these days, enabled the decision makers locally and internationally to focus on us, women in conflict areas. In 2005, we, a group of women from Israel, Palestine, and the international community, established the International Women Commission for Just and Sustainable Palestinian-Israeli Peace. This group was initiated by UNIFEM, and we work together as one group who speak in one voice since. It was not easy to maintain the same views over the years. It was especially hard at times of national stress and violence. It was extremely difficult during the rocket shelling over the Israeli city of Sderot, and more so during the military attack on Gaza in January 2009. But we managed to overcome these times and continue to work together. We all share the same political vision. We all share the idea that peace between our peoples is possible. But we need to have it established on a two-state solution. We need to establish it on the borders of June 4th, 1967. We need to establish it on Jerusalem as the capital of the two states. During the past 2 years, the International Women Commission conducted a series of public hearings among Israeli women all over the country. We opened a space for women from all avenues of society to speak about themselves in regard of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and to speak about peace. There are two very strong conclusions that came out of these hearings. The first was the painful realization that Israeli women do not have a vision of peace. They could not phrase what peace means to them. They could not dream. All they could do was talk about security. You know, when you ask an average Israeli man or woman what peace means, they will automatically say security. And security is not peace. The other very interesting point that came out of those hearings was that Israeli women in general did not have a different view than men. The only women that had different view and could come out with a different discourse were those who were already active in peace movements, those who made an effort and met with Palestinian women, those who were able to meet firsthand with the occupation, those who could see the people on the other side. Unfortunately, all other women could not recite the mainstream militaristic discourse and did not present a different view from the average Israeli man. I think this is a direct outcome of a nation which is involved in a violent armed conflict for so long. This is why it is extremely important that when we have women sitting at the negotiating table and when we have women sitting at national decision-making processes, we have women who went through a process, women who are educated in women issues, women who had a chance to develop their own worldview, coming from their life experience, which is separated from the mainstream discourse, which is very often dictated by not only men, but by army generals. Before concluding, let me briefly mention a third pragmatic dilemma. It relates to the fact that Israel is overwhelmingly flooded with alpha male militaristic discourse. The main political players are almost invariable ex-generals. The main decision-making forums are completely male. In such an environment, a single representative of a female gender wouldn't really stand a chance. So, do we want to fight for a mere token female representation and thereby help the male powers that to be paid lip service to the requirement of the law? Or do we rather choose to stay outside, thereby perpetuating the present dismal situation? And last thing before I finish, I want to point out that Israel has the most right-wing government ever. This government couples with anti-democratic forces in Israel, and together they orchestrate a planned, deeply designed, very sophisticated, multi-angle campaign against human rights activists and organizations, against peace activists and organizations. The last wave of attacks targeted universities in Israel who dare present courses with critical views on the state. And right after, there is a massive attack on theater actors who declared they will refuse to come and play in a theater in one of the largest settlements in the occupied West Bank. So it is clear that Israel today, a human rights believer or an activist, equals leftist, and the leftist equals a traitor. So here am I, standing here, peace believer and an activist, considered a traitor in my own country. You know why? Because I still believe in a just and sustainable peace with the Palestinian people based on a two-state solution, and I strongly support the end of the occupation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was very impressive, and it's good to hear about the initiatives. It's marvelous, and it's also a daunting task ahead for you and your fellow, well, dreamers, leftists, traitors. No, for the people who have the courage to believe in something and to fight from it. And I think you also rightfully reminded us that changing gender roles is not something that is done quickly, and especially not in very complex and very controversial conflicts. Thank you very much. It's hard to now take a breath and say, now let's discuss again the implementation of 1325. But I think having heard the three impressions from the countries, having heard what EU, UN, Germany has been doing, I think we have some food for not only thought, but also for discussion. And I see that there's many of you, and you probably want to start discussing right now. So, Rebecca, can I ask you to join us up here on this panel? It's, let me see, it's been called a panel of assessing what we've learned from the cases. So, nothing less for, let's say, 45 minutes. I think we're all clear. We'll get started here. And as a moderator, I would like to ask you to maybe not go into the examples so much. You'll have whole workshops tomorrow with our dear colleagues, whom I thank again for sharing your experiences with us. I think we should leave concrete questions maybe for tomorrow and concentrate right now on focusing what are our observations, what have we learned from the very different contexts which have shown us, I mean, there's still huge challenges. So maybe we start without a round on the panel, as normally you have a panel and we start to speak now for 20 minutes and then we open to the public. I think that's probably not what would be good now. I would like to ask you to make short statements, make short questions if there's a question, so that we can start comparing the experiences and that we can start maybe also drawing some lessons that can also help us tomorrow and in the following days. I think there's a microphone coming around. There's one person, there's another person. I see two of you. Can I ask you, well, to be short, I did that, and maybe to present yourselves briefly. And I would like to collect a couple of statements and questions and then ask you maybe to react. Is that okay with you? And also to react to each other then. So anything that comes up now, food for thought. We have 45 minutes in this setting, but then there's the reception and you have much more time to speak with people, as long as you can stand on your feet. So here you go. The floor is yours. Which one?
I think she was ahead of me. So go ahead? All right. My name is Awina Okech. I'm from the University of Cape Town. I have much more of a comment than a question. I think just jumping off of the last presentation and casting it wider, I think two critical issues are raised for me in terms of 1325 implementation. One is the fact that the implementation of 1325, or the very idea of it, is predicated on the existence of a state, and the existence of a state that is functioning and willing to commit to and implement these things. The Israeli-Palestine situation, the DRC situation, and other numerous examples around the world show us that that very idea is in itself fraught. So if you're working within a structure where the very idea of the state in itself is problematic, how therefore do you begin to work with these ideas that are embedded within it? The second is much more of a structural question, which is what I'm personally interested in. And this is the fact that feminist theory, particular strands of feminist theory and ideology have for very long, and they're often not heard, have for very long challenged us on the idea of organizing around identity women. Because that very identity of womanhood is mobilized alongside ethnicity, alongside religion, into the gains of conflict and war. And if this very identity is mobilized, it becomes very difficult to remobilize it towards other gains, because the nationalist agenda often supersedes that. It gets triumphed over the woman identity. And I think part of the questions that we need to ask ourselves in the course of the 2 days is, if we realize, if 50% of us who are in this room actually are sympathetic to feminist theory and ideology, if we realize that that very identity is problematic and it's fraught and is based on heteronormativity and all of that, how then do we reconceptualize that in terms of implementing 1325? Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. Another comment or question?
Yeah, my name is Nadia Ali. I'm from SOAS in London. More comment, but a bit of a question. I suspect I'm not the only one who's found herself listening and on the one side thinking about, you know, all the things that are wrong with 1325 in terms of how it's not implemented, but also some of the underlying assumptions. And even Rebecca, who is sort of, I felt a lot for you. I mean, you're sort of put there, it's like the best practice, the good example. And I mean, there is so much positive, but also, I mean, you come out at the end saying, but you know, 85% of women in Liberia are not really, do not benefit from the structures. And so, you know, not wanting to be so pessimistic and negative, and we need to work with something, but at the same time I wonder, you know, is it time to sort of more critically ask ourselves, well, is it really what we need, and does it actually do the job? And I mean, with respect to Israel and Palestine, I just I very much appreciated Anat's stress on, well, it's not about bringing women in, because I think too often the debate is still about that, the kind of add women and stir approach, and that's not what it's about. It's about you know, a certain perspective, and I say a feminist perspective, actually, bring it to the table. But I think often I find it's really sort of, you know, bringing the women in, and that is often very problematic because the women actually, we know that they can bring in the same militarized masculine ideas. But I think one of the problems I find, particularly I know more about Israel-Palestine, is that the underlying assumption that what women do is sort of, you know, we are better peacemakers, and the idea of that what also Palestinian women want to do is engage in dialogue. I just happened to examine a PhD which was based on 1 year in the West Bank and interviewing about 100 Palestinian women's activists. And what they wanted to do, they didn't want to do peace and dialogue, they wanted to resist. But they engaged in non-violent resistance, and they wanted to be steadfast. And I think that's sort of also one of the problems, that we kind of, there's all this sort of money going into dialogue. But with the women in that study were saying, well, you know, no, that is not, we don't want to talk anymore. You know, we want to resist. And I think that's something that in a situation like Palestine-Israel, that's also one of the failure of 1325, that assumes that what women want to do is talk.
Thank you very much. I have two people I see. Did I miss anybody? Over there? You also signed up? No, so it's you. Okay.
I would like to add to what she was saying in terms of introducing a more pacifist standpoint, that I don't think we have to engender armies. I think we have to abolish them. I very much connect to what Anat was saying, and I've been working a lot in Israel and Palestine, and I think the Israeli army is one example of a lot of women being in the army and it not changing the character of the army and militarism at all. So I don't think that engendering militarist institutions, even if they are called peace forces or something, or humanitarian interventions, is the way to go. I think we need to start at a totally different point.
Okay, so this is food for discussion. There's somebody else, yeah? Yeah.
Yeah, I have some worry about 1325 in some countries like mine. In India, for example, when we've asked the government what about 1325, they've said there are no armed conflicts in India. So they don't even recognize the fact that Kashmir is an armed conflict, that there has been an armed conflict in Nagaland for 50 years, that the Naxalites, because they just call it disturbances or law and order issues. So even getting to 1325, recognizing, I mean, it's such a distant goal, and so there are many countries which are on totally different pages, and we have to see that. So within 1325, for example, there's no recognition of minorities at risk, how tribals are being treated, etc. So, I mean, while civil society is talking about 1325, the state views it very cynically.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for your opinions, for your statements. I think it's now time maybe to also ask you for your statements on what you've heard and how you relate to these issues. Do you want to start, Rebecca? Could we go this way? Sure. Is that okay?
Sure. So the lady in the back, the comment she made around the issue of women as a topic for advocacy. I actually think that the issue is not really woman, and the only reason why the woman is drawn out outstanding is because the evil is perpetrated against women most. But the concept is around equality, equity, and that's the main issue. And so because women are affected by this this action of maybe deprivation or violence, so the attention is drawn to women. But I think the 1325 actually talk about gender. When we talk about women, we talk about gender because gender is closely related to women, because the evil that gender perpetrates is usually closely related to women. That's the reason why people use woman. And for us in Liberia, what we have begun to do is to look at the messages to take across to people, because we don't want to perpetrate that which we are fighting against. So we would like our messages to be really sensitive and related to gender, so that men don't feel excluded and what have you. So, like I said, the concept is inequality. It's not a woman as a concept. It's something that has to do with equity and inequality and power balance, and I think that's what it is. And also, there was a comment about whether this 1325 is relevant. I don't know if I got your question right. And whether 1325 is the issue, looking at all the difficulties and.
I think working, whether it's
yeah.
Just for the translator, whether we need to rethink was the question.
Okay. Anyway, whether we really need to rethink, I think if you look at the Liberian situation and you learn from we learn from experience that this particular instrument is really, really relevant and very important to us. Like I said from the introduction of my presentation, I said we realized that this instrument is a lobbying tool. We use it to lobby because it gave us a place. It gave us the chance to assert our claims. And then we can have something to help us lobby and advocate for the promotion of women's rights. So I think it's a tool that is really relevant, and it's not an issue of rethinking. It's the issue of looking at it and looking at the challenges, for instance, that we've talked about, and see how we can address these challenges so that we move forward. Because it clearly gives a guide on how we can tackle the issues that relate to inequality towards women.
Any other point you want to touch? Otherwise, I'd ask Anat, and we can make several rounds. So this doesn't have to be conclusive.
Let's speak. I have a third point that I will probably talk about later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rebecca. Anat.
I think, well, there are a few thoughts that come out of the presentations that I can point at. The first one is the point of view. I think it was very clear to see the European point of view mentioning the peace commissions and integrating the women perspective into the peace commissions that are sending elsewhere, while we are experiencing the violent conflict, and we live under the violent conflict, and in a way we pay the price of this violent conflict. And in a way, I think, relating to your comment, I think 1325 reflects the condition of women in a violent conflict very, very strongly. And it may have downsides to it, or it may not be the ultimate tool to promote women, but the fact that it reflects the situation of women in conflict areas, I think by itself is a very powerful tool for the international community and of course the communities that are under this conflict. And I think we are viewing different phases of political evolution here. I mean, and this is also something that we need to put on the table, because we are not, all of us, experiencing the same political situation, the same development in discourse, in feminist discourse, and we don't all have the same liberty to work in the same with the same energies. So we're very different, and I think it emphasizes the fact that women are not all the same, of course. And I also agree very much with the comment about changing the army from within, it doesn't work. But there was a debate in Israel whether, you know, implementing equality between genders in the army will promote women in the army through the army avenues, and then they will have a better place in the civil positions. It doesn't work. Somehow it doesn't work, even though the Israeli society is very much influenced by the army. It doesn't work. And I personally don't believe in this kind of promoting women through the army channels. So it's interesting to see how different people coming from different places in the world see the 1325 differently, and the implementation of it, or the use of it. And I must say that in Israel, as I mentioned before, which was the first country to make it as a law of the state, people still ask, why do we need women to sit at the negotiating table? I mean, they don't understand why women have a different perspective and a different discourse, and you have to work very hard to talk about it and to influence people. And this is another way to use 1325 as an education tool. So I don't know. I try to be optimistic and think that we may see a different reality sometimes in the future.
Thank you very much, Anat. Yeah, Zahira, I think it starts once you start talking. So
okay, I will start talking, but I didn't see that it's. I don't know. You here? Huh? Okay. First of all, I believe that feminist theory is very related to 1325 and about because it talks about justice, it talks about equality, about human rights and all that, and we believe on this. But on the same time, it has, for us as Palestinian people, how we react to it. As a person or as a Palestinian people who are under occupation, which justice we are calling for? First of all, I want to be free from occupation. I want to be free. I couldn't exercise my self-determination as a woman while I'm in a country that it is not controlling itself and it's not able to establish its own rules and its own control on the country. And accordingly, I accept that, when you make any kind of a study, you find women that they want to go to resistance, because even when we talk to them about different things, about the violence that they are facing, they are saying that will be ended after occupation is ended. Sometimes it's very difficult to talk about any kind of issues while you are under occupation. But still, yes, we are doing a different kind of training on gender issues. We send women to Sweden to, from the security people to have this gender kind of training and to work on security and human security, what it is meant by human security. Because, as people, we believe that this cannot be wait also until we are get rid of occupation. We have to do all this in parallel to each other. We are working a lot on changing the laws that we have on the family status law, on the penal law, on civil status law, because these laws are also depriving depriving women from to exercise their full rights. So there is a lot of work that is going on these issues. And at the same time, we are pressing our government to have women in the negotiation team, even if they are not on the table, but they have to listen to us as women, what we are thinking about peace and how we are dealing with it, what are the needs of women that should be taken into consideration, because, you know, we feel that Oslo Agreement, when they accept dividing the country into areas A and B and C, it is preventing us from movement and from education and from health services, and we are in need of all these kind of things. So they have to listen to us also as they are listening to other people. But at the same time, I can tell you that before Oslo Agreement, there was much more work with Israeli women than it is now. And both sides were more aware about each other on these issues. After Israel has started building the wall, Israeli people are not able to come to West Bank and Gaza. And as Palestinian people, we are not able to go to Israel and talk to the people. And so relations are much, much less than it was before. Knowing the other is very important to be aware of the other. I cannot be aware about somebody that I didn't know, and only what I know about them, it is the refiles, it is the killing, it is the imprisonment, and it is these. So I know the Israelis, and there is a generation that is born after 1993 that they come to know the Israelis only through the military army and not through people-to-people experiences. And this is, it is also on the expenses, it is against the interest of the two people. And I think this is one of the things that even the international community can do something on the Israeli government in order to end the occupation, and we become like two states living alongside each other. And as people, I think what we are saying as Palestinians, it's that we make like a compromise with ourselves, that okay, I can say that Palestine, my nation is Palestine, but it is my state country. It is West Bank and Gaza. It is the Palestinian Authority. So we come to identify by the two things in order to accept the two-state solution. And I think this is an opportunity to, and we believe that this is the last opportunity that we have. If the negotiations that are going on now, it does not came with fruitful results, it will be, I don't know what will become next. Thank you.
Thank you, Zahira. Rebecca has another comment.
Yeah, I was actually thinking when my colleagues were talking. When we talk about the 1325 and the 3 P's, or in Liberia we say the 4 P's, we talk about participation, prevention, promotion. Those things, when we say participation, we talk about women representation. And representation is not just presentations. So when we say representation, we want women that can represent the voices of women and articulate. Women can identify, they can design, they can articulate and implement the things that affect us as women. And that representation is that claim of representation is supported by the 1325. So that what makes the 1325 a very relevant tool for us, especially in our own context as Liberian. You look at the tradition where women are the one who took the bulk of the work. They take care of the farm work, cut the bush, and everything. She takes care of the family. And so, in fact, girls are not sent to school. And so all of these factors affect her participation. And the 1325, in a sense, support this claim that women need to participate. And so our National Action Plan has designed strategy to work in line with these issues so that women will participate more. And so then it's not just representation, it becomes presentation. For instance, we had a situation with the security sector, and we have called for 20% women representation. And there was a proposal that we could lower the standards because we wanted more women. We said no. The women will be present and represented. They should be capable and women so that they can articulate the real views of women and women's interests. So the issue is that when we talk about gender and equity, it's allowing us as women to reach our full potential. There should be nothing to stop us. And so the circumstances and the condition that stops us from reaching that potential. And it's what we speak against. And it's a certain thing that help us to lobby so that we can be able to gain that space. So it really makes it 1325 a very relevant tool for us in our particular situation in Liberia. So it's something, it's not just the issue of feminism, it's the issue of, it's feminism in a sense, but it's the issue of equity and human rights.
Thank you very much for reminding us again what's at stake. Do I see anybody else who wanted to say something? Otherwise, yeah, go ahead, please. Can you get a mic?
This is for you, Rebecca. I was just wondering, because I was, pardon?
Can you also say your name, please?
Okay, I'm Dr. Salins, and I am a PhD student, and I've finished my PhD, and I'm from St. Andrews in Scotland, yes, but of Indian origin, all right. I've just got to ask you a question with regards to what it may appear has happened. I mean, this is from taking the perspective of certain aid workers who have gone and helped Liberia as such. I mean, I do condemn rape in every form that it is. But is there a culture where sex was used as currency as opposed, I mean, say, for instance, in the 1940s when England and the whole of UK was under rationing, quite often a bit of nookie on the side would end up, you would get a bit more, slices of rashers of bacon or something else like that. There is an endemic part of society which has got quite used to this kind of practices, which kind of blur the lines as far as it's more to do with exploitation of women as opposed to, say, rape, I mean, in every form of it. And, I was very happy to see that the Indian peacekeepers, and they sent an a completely woman contingent there. Wasn't it also to do to clean their image as far as it goes? Because what they would, the so-called peacekeepers in the Democratic Republic of Congo, strong, serious allegations were made against them, where they were not only using sex as a form of currency, but also giving legitimate or illegitimate support to various other rebel organizations to transport minerals for monetary use. And, this was also used as a ploy to say to the rest of, because part of India is we are desperately trying to get onto the permanent security seat, and we wanted to clean our image, and we said, okay, if our men are up to all this rubbish, let's send a woman's team as far as it goes, and to sort out.
Did you hear it? No, not.
Yes,
yeah.
some of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. That is part of it, and of course, with regards to the Israeli and Palestinian problem, aren't you at present actually negotiating with the wrong set of people? Because isn't it people like Khalid Mashal and those set of people, or Hassan Nasrallah and everything else, who actually hold the keys to quite a lot of the issues, as opposed to, Abu Mazen and, Saidi Rakat and all these other people who are become darlings of the West as such?
Wow, a whole set of questions, and many of those can be also dealt with at the, we probably will not be able to, really go into depth with it, because long discussions, how culturally endemic and, culpable, what is the Indian interest in sending the women's battalion. But maybe, Rebecca, you can answer briefly.
I actually did not clearly get the question. So maybe if you just in one sentence or two sentences will repeat. Yeah.
Maybe I can try to summarize.
Because you're asking a bit.
I was just asking to say that
yeah. Was sex a currency, and is it really to rephrase you, what I understood, is it as serious a human rights abuse, or is it a cultural issue?
I think it actually depends from whence you come. It depends from, like I said, from whence you come, right? Actually, the issue of sex trade, if I'm getting you right, is something that is very embedded in the culture. If you want to give a picture of it, we think from a human rights perspective, looking at the people's capacity, looking at the girls' condition, and several factors that will make a young girl not equally powerful as a man who has a lot of money. Those factors will render the man who asks a woman for sex, and just because he thinks he has money and he can use it, a perpetrator of sexual exploitation and abuse. Why do I say so? I say so because it's a kind of power imbalance. You have money. She doesn't have money. She needs to eat. You could always give her food and money if you really have so much more without having sex with her. But now you use the fact that she doesn't have money, and so you exploit the situation, and so we call it sexual exploitation and abuse. But it's also readily accepted in a culture, in a sense. I want to say that because the family of this young girl may probably say, it's a luck, because you come along with maybe $10 or $20 that she can't easily get, and you offer this money to her, and because you want sex in return. Of course, you don't mean anything, and sometimes maybe you even transmit. So looking at all of those things, we from a human rights perspective consider such an act as a violation of her rights, in a sense, because she's not capable of analyzing the danger. And then the factors are also against her, and you use that, I want to speak French, I want to say peut-être. Sorry, you use that maybe, and you take advantage of the situation, so you have sex with her. And so her parents accept it because they need the money. And she accepts it because she thinks it's a pride for her to be behind a man who works with an NGO, and maybe he works with the UN. But that's the situation. Yes, sometimes it's a cultural issue. But we consider it greatly as sexual exploitation and abuse.
I think it's a huge topic, and I would leave it at that. And also the question of, you know, what motivated India to send the battalion and how successful that really was. That's probably also something for tomorrow. I
can surely speak for the UN. I wouldn't know why it did what it did.
Yeah, but there's probably some interest. I have another question. Are you? No. Okay. Maybe. Yeah. Heide Schütz, maybe, and then I'd like to sum up a bit and let us go for more exchange. I mean, this is not the end of it. There's 2 more questions or comments, whatever.
From what I have heard, my name is Heide Schütz, Women's Network for Peace, Germany. From what I have heard and from my own experience during different discussions, the question of mandate, and you called it selection criteria, is hanging in the air. And I think there are many different aspects to it, and I would love to have this conference cover this aspect as well, because we as supporters are also confronted. We are not women under conflict here in Germany, but we support women. And the question of mandating is thrown at me many times, not from the women in conflict, but from those in Germany who have the power to do something or not to do something. So maybe we can discuss this, because I think there are many different aspects to the mandate of women. To my understanding, the resolution as such is the mandate we have been long looking for, and we should use it as the mandate, but other people don't believe it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Ilan Alevi. I'm a political advisor in the General Delegation of Palestine in Berlin. I just wanted to make 2 short remarks. One, to strengthen what my sister and friend Zahira said about the regression of Israeli-Palestinian dialogue at women's level, but at all levels. I just wanted to stress that this is not only a result of the wall and the physical incapacity to meet. This is also a result of the political situation that developed after the Oslo agreements. And while dialogue had been a very advanced, progressive, courageous practice before the agreements, it became very ritualized and empty of content once there were official negotiations and contacts between the State of Israel on the one hand and the PLO on the other hand, before the whole peace process went into regression. Now, the 2 other remarks I wanted to make to the lady from Soros is that resistance and dialogue are not 2 contradictory options. Most Palestinians will tell you that dialogue is necessary, but that it can only be fruitful if we resist at the same time. That if we don't resist, we don't have a balance of power, we don't exist at all. And when I say balance of power, I of course do not mean a military balance of power, which we cannot even dream of. I'm talking about a political and moral balance of power. Now, to our comrade and brother from India, I would say that Khaled Mash'al certainly is an important leading figure in the Hamas movement. And the Hamas movement emerged from the last elections in 2006 as the biggest Palestinian political party. But it got 44% of the votes out of 63% of participation. That does not make them express neither the unanimity, not even the majority of the Palestinian people. That today, the majority of the Palestinian people send Hamas and Fatah back to back, demanding unity, reconciliation, and power sharing, without which there will be no solution, without which the West Bank and the Gaza Strip will remain as 2 different entities, and there is nobody. It's easy for the Israelis to say they have no partner to talk to. This is why reconciliation between Fatah and Hamas is one of our first priorities, together with negotiation and resistance. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I also see some feet moving, and I think it's time to move now and to have more smaller discussions, and I also see that many are looking forward to deepening all the issues tomorrow. Let me just maybe allow me 3 sentences of what I take from the interesting presentations and the panels. I mean, we've seen good advances, people-to-people processes, mandates, papers, structures, but we also see the amount of challenges ahead. And in these big challenges, we find that Resolution 1325 and following might be a good tool, but they're a small tool. I mean, they're not there to bring equality, to bring peace, to overcome military thinking, etc. So we're dealing with a resolution which is at the intersection of various things. And I would like to take up also the point of how much military thinking do you have to engage with to change the military and to come to peace? How much organizing around women's identity do you need to have to bring gender on the agenda? So, I mean, it's not that easy and straightforward. We can probably use 1325 for a number of things, but we have to be aware of those tensions and those difficulties to really make our engagement worthwhile. And yeah, and maybe also a call for all of us to be very realistic and not expect that 1325 will change the world, but also not lose the opportunities that it might give us to lobby in our own spheres of influence to make this world more just and more equitable and more just for us all. So thank you very much for bearing with us for a long time, with the prospect of having more days to discuss and to have panels that allow you to go much deeper into all the things we've just managed to scratch on. Thank you very much to our panelists.